Let me tell you about the worst job interview of my life. Not because I was unprepared. Not because I said something embarrassing or wore the wrong thing or showed up late. I was prepared, appropriately dressed, and 7 minutes early. The worst job interview of my life was the worst because I got the job, and the job was pretending to be someone's wife. My name is Nora Callahan. At the time this story starts, I was 26 years old, 3 months out of a graduate program in literature that had cost me everything and prepared me for approximately nothing. Subletting a room in an apartment with two roommates and an aggressive mold situation in the bathroom, and working four part-time jobs that together almost covered my rent. Almost, not fully, almost. I tutored undergraduates. I copy edited for a small academic press. I walked dogs for three families in the nice part of the city, which meant I spent my mornings in neighborhoods I could not afford, holding leashes attached to dogs that ate better than I did. And I worked Friday and Saturday nights at a catering company, passing appetizers at the kind of events where people spent more on a single table centerpiece than I made in a month. That last job was where it started. The event was a charity gala. The kind of gala that happens in a glass building downtown with a view of the whole city and a guest list that reads like a directory of everyone who has ever made a decision that affected your life without knowing your name. I was in the black uniform, tray in hand, doing the invisible work of making a glamorous evening function when I walked directly into the most intimidating person I had ever seen. Not physically walked into. She stepped into my path and I stopped, and the glasses on my tray did not fall, which I considered a personal victory, given how badly the moment wanted to go wrong. She was tall. Dark hair, severe cut, the kind of posture that suggested she had never been uncertain about where she was standing in a room. A black dress that cost more than my monthly rent by a visible margin. Eyes that cataloged me in approximately 1 second and reached a conclusion I was not privy to. I said, "I'm so sorry." She said, "You have a literature degree." I stared at her. "Your name tag says Nora," she said. "There's a copy of Middlemarch in your jacket pocket. You're at a catering job on a Friday night, which means you need money, but the book means you're not trying to change fields. Literature. That was not a question." "Yes," I said. "Graduate degree." "Why does that matter?" "It matters because I need someone articulate," she said. "Adaptable. Capable of performing a role convincingly for an evening." She looked at the tray in my hands. "Someone who can function under pressure." I looked back at her. "I'm working," I said. "I know," she said. "I'll wait." She handed me a business card. On one side was a name, Madeline Voss, and the name of a company I recognized because it was on three buildings I passed on my way to the dog walking job. On the other side, she had written a number, not a phone number, a dollar amount, and the words Saturday, 7 p.m., dinner, 3 hours maximum. I looked at the card. I looked at her. I looked at the card again. "I have questions," I said. "Of course you do," she said. "Saturday." She walked away through the crowd the way she moved through everything, like the room had always been expecting her. I put the card in my pocket next to Middlemarch. I told myself I was not going to call. I called the next morning. Her assistant explained it, not Madeline herself. Her assistant, a very efficient man named Thomas, who spoke in the brisk tone of someone who had explained things like this before and had stopped being surprised by them. "Miss Voss requires a +1 for family dinner this Saturday," he said. "Her grandmother's annual gathering. The grandmother has made it a condition of a significant inheritance that Madeline present as settled and partnered by her 35th birthday, which is in 3 weeks. Ms. Voss has been declining to address this for 2 years. The dinner can no longer be avoided. Why doesn't she just bring someone she actually knows?" I said. "Because the people she actually knows," Thomas said with the careful diplomacy of someone choosing every word, "are aware of her real life and cannot be trusted to perform a fiction for an evening without complications." I thought about that. "And you want a stranger," I said. "Miss Voss prefers someone with no existing stake in the outcome," Thomas said. "Someone who can be briefed, perform the role, and return to their life afterward with no entanglement." 3 hours, I said. 3 hours maximum. The dinner begins at 7. You would be introduced as Madeline's partner of 8 months. There is a document you would sign, standard confidentiality agreement, ensuring you don't discuss the arrangement. The figure on the card is your compensation. I looked at the figure on the card, which I had been looking at on and off since Friday night. It was 4 months of my almost, but not fully rent. For 3 hours. What exactly do I have to do? I said. Sit beside her, Thomas said. Answer questions about how you met. Seem plausible. Don't contradict anything she says. And under no circumstances discuss her company, her finances, or her personal history with anyone at the table. I can do that, I said. I know, Thomas said. Ms. Voss is a good judge of capability. I signed the confidentiality agreement digitally that afternoon. I did not read it as carefully as I should have. This is a fact I have revisited many times. I was 26 and needed the money, and the document was 11 pages long and written in the specific legal language designed to make your eyes slide off the page. I read the summary paragraph, confirmed it said what Thomas had described: confidentiality, non-disclosure, compensation terms, and signed. I did not read page 7. I will come back to page 7. Saturday arrived, and I wore the best thing I owned, a dark green dress I had bought for my graduate school graduation that had been worn exactly twice since, and took the train to an address in the part of the city where the buildings had doormen who nodded at you specifically rather than generally. Madeline's apartment was on the 14th floor. She opened the door herself, which surprised me. She was in a charcoal suit, severe and immaculate, hair up. She looked at me for one moment in the particular assessing way I remembered from the gala. The dress works, she said. Come in. I came in. The apartment was exactly what you would expect from someone who ran a company, whose name was on buildings. Clean lines, expensive simplicity, the kind of space that had been designed rather than accumulated. Books on the shelves, which I noted because it told me something. Not decorative books, actual books, cracked spines and bookmarks and the evidence of being read. She handed me a single printed page. Background brief, she said. Read it before we leave. It covers how we met, how long we've been together, what I've told my family. Don't add details I haven't given you. Keep answers short. The less you say, the less you have to maintain. I read it. According to the brief, we had met 8 months ago at an industry event. I was a writer, which was close enough to true. We had been dating quietly, which explained why no one had met me yet. I lived in the city. I liked architecture, which was something Madeline's grandmother was passionate about and would likely discuss. Do I need to know anything about architecture? I said. Enough to ask questions, she said. My grandmother appreciates curiosity more than knowledge. Ask her what she considers the most underrated building in this city. She will talk for 20 minutes. That covers the first half of dinner. I looked at her. You've done this before, I said. No, she said, but I know my grandmother. She was putting on her watch. A simple one. No ornamentation, the kind of watch that exists entirely to tell time. Why are you telling me to keep answers short? I said. Most people in this situation would want their fake partner to be convincing. Elaborate. She glanced at me. Because elaborate creates inconsistency, she said. Short and warm is harder to contradict than detailed and specific. The goal is not to be impressive. The goal is to be unremarkable. I thought about that. You've thought about this a lot, I said. I think about everything a lot, she said. Are you ready? Almost, I said. One question. She waited. Why me specifically? I said. You could have hired someone professional, an actor. Someone trained for this. She picked up her coat. Because actors perform, she said. I don't want a performance. I want someone who is genuinely themselves and happens to be standing beside me. It's more convincing. She looked at me directly for the first time since I had arrived. You are genuinely yourself. I noticed that at the gala. You were doing invisible work in a room full of people performing, and you were just doing the work. I was passing appetizers, I said. You were reading between trays, she said. That's not performance. That's just who you are. She opened the door. I picked up my bag and followed her. The grandmother's house was 40 minutes outside the city, and exactly what the word grandmother's house implies when the grandmother in question has a net worth that requires professional management. Large, old, warm in a way that very expensive houses sometimes manage to be, with the particular smell of old wood and good cooking, and a fireplace that had been used regularly for decades. There were 9 people at the dinner table. Madeline's grandmother, Eleanor, was 81 years old and the most immediately perceptive person I had ever sat across from. She had white hair and dark eyes that were Madeline's eyes, older and sharper, and she looked at me across the table, the way a person looks when they are deciding in real time whether you are worth their attention. I asked her about the most underrated building in the city. She talked for 23 minutes. I listened genuinely, which was not difficult because she was fascinating and specific and had opinions about structural integrity and public space that I had never heard anyone articulate so clearly. I asked follow-up questions. She answered them. By the end of the appetizer course, she had turned her chair slightly toward me in the unconscious way people do when they have decided they like someone. Beside me, Madeline was conducting the rest of the table with the same economy she brought to everything else. Short answers, precise, managing her family the way I suspected she managed her company. Her cousin tried twice to ask about the relationship and was redirected both times with a smoothness that was almost invisible. Once, when the cousin asked me directly how we had met, I said at an industry event she showed up where I was working, and I couldn't look away. Which was in the brief, but also, I realized as I said it, technically true in a way I had not intended. Madeline's hand, which had been on the table, moved to my arm, a brief touch. Performative, I told myself. Part of the scene. I told myself that. Eleanor watched it happen with an expression that was not readable. After dinner, there was the particular stretch of a family evening where the meal is finished, but no one has quite decided to leave. Madeline and I ended up on the terrace. It was cold, the kind of October cold that has made up its mind, and she had her coat and I did not, and she noticed this, and held her coat open in a gesture that was so natural and so unperformed that I stepped into it before I had decided to. We stood there in one coat looking at the dark garden below, and neither of us said anything for a moment. "She's watching us," Madeline said quietly. "I know," I said. "She looks satisfied," she said. "Good," I said. Another moment. "You're good at this," she said, "not the performance, the presence. You were genuinely interested in her." "She's genuinely interesting," I said. The building opinions are real. "Did you know she consulted on the restoration of the Carey building in 1987? "I didn't know that," Madeline said. "She told me during the fish course." "You were managing your uncle." A pause. Then something I had not heard from her yet. A small, quiet sound that was almost a laugh. I looked at her sideways. She was looking at the garden. "Thank you," she said, "for this evening." "It was a job," I said, but I meant it in the least dismissive way. "Yes," she said. She said it with something I could not identify, a weight to it. The cousin appeared in the doorway, and we stepped apart, and the evening moved toward its ending. In the car back to the city, she was quiet. "At my building," she said, "Thomas will arrange the remaining payment Monday." "Thank you," I said. She nodded once. I got out. She did not drive away immediately. I noticed that from the lobby. The car sat for a moment before pulling out. I went upstairs. I put the dress away. I took out Middlemarch and sat on my bed and thought about a woman on a terrace in one coat and the particular texture of an evening I could not categorize. I went to sleep. I did not think about page 7. 3 weeks passed. I tutored undergraduates. I walked dogs. I copy-edited a paper about medieval agricultural practices. I worked 2 catering events. I did not think about Madeline Voss except occasionally, and then I told myself I was not thinking about her and moved on. The money had cleared on Monday as promised. I paid 2 months of rent, bought groceries that did not come from the reduced section, and replaced the pair of shoes that had been held together by determination and strategic avoidance of puddles. I did not hear from her. This was expected. This was the arrangement. One evening, compensation, no entanglement. I had been specifically selected because I had no stake in the outcome. Then, on a Thursday morning, 41 days after the dinner, I received a letter. Not an email. A physical letter, cream envelope, my full name and address in a handwriting that was precise and slightly architectural. Inside was a single page. At the top was the name of a law firm. Below that was language I had to read 3 times before I understood what it was saying. It was informing me that a registration had been filed under the Legal Partnerships and Civil Unions Act of the state on the date of our dinner, in the jurisdiction of the county where the dinner had taken place, which apparently had a provision for verbal partnerships witnessed by a legal professional, and Eleanor's attorney had been present and at the dinner, which I had not known, which Madeline had presumably known, which I was now being informed of in a letter from a law firm. The confidentiality agreement I had signed, page 7. I sat at my kitchen table and read page 7 of the document I had signed 41 days ago. It was still on my laptop. I opened it. I found the paragraph. The language was technical and specific, and it took me 4 readings to understand that what I had signed was not just a confidentiality agreement. Buried in the legal architecture of page 7 was a registration clause, a formality Thomas had probably believed, a technical requirement of the jurisdiction, something the attorney had added as a protective measure in case the arrangement was ever questioned. I was, on paper, in the county records, legally partnered to Madeline Voss. I called the number on the letter. The attorney said, "Yes, Miss Callahan, this is why we're reaching out. Ms. Voss became aware of the clause approximately 3 weeks ago. She wanted you to be informed formally. 3 weeks ago," I said. "Yes," he said carefully. "She knew 3 weeks ago," I said. "She wanted to consult with her legal team before contacting you," he said, "to understand the options." "What are the options?" I said. "There is a simple dissolution process," he said. "Given the nature of the arrangement, it would be straightforward. Paperwork, a brief waiting period, no complications. Miss Voss is prepared to handle all associated costs." "Okay," I said. "Would you like me to initiate the process?" he said. I looked at the letter on my table. "I'll contact you," I said. I ended the call. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time. The thing I kept returning to was not the legal clause, not the paperwork. It was the 3 weeks. She had known for 3 weeks and had not initiated the dissolution. She had consulted lawyers. She had written me a letter by hand. She had waited. That was not the behavior of someone who considered this a simple administrative error. I picked up my phone. I did not call the attorney back. I called the number on the back of the business card I had kept in the pocket of my green dress for 41 days. She answered on the second ring. "I got the letter," I said. "I know," she said. "I'm sorry. I should have told you in person." "Why didn't you?" I said. A pause. The kind of pause that has something in it. "I was trying to decide something," she said. "What were you trying to decide?" I said. She was quiet for a moment. "Whether I wanted to dissolve it immediately," she said. And I said, and she said, "I've been sitting with it for 3 weeks and I haven't dissolved it, and I think that means something. My heart was doing something complicated." "You should have told me," I said. "Yes," she said. "I know. This is my life too," I said. "You don't get to make a decision about my legal status without telling me." "You're right," she said. "Completely right. I have no defense. I am telling you now, and I'm telling you that I should have told you sooner, and I'm telling you that, whatever you decide, I will facilitate immediately without question." "What am I deciding?" I said. "Whether you want it dissolved," she said, "or whether you want to have a conversation first." I looked at the letter. "What kind of conversation?" I said. "The kind where I tell you that I have thought about you every day for 41 days, she said, which was not the arrangement. The arrangement was one evening and no entanglement. And I have failed the no entanglement part comprehensively. I sat very still. "The kind where I tell you that I know this is an absurd thing to say to someone you have spent one evening with," she said, "and that I am not asking you for anything, but I am asking you, before we dissolve the paperwork, to have dinner with me, a real one. where I am not managing my family and you are not performing a role, and we find out whether what I think happened on that terrace is something or nothing. The kitchen was very quiet. You're very direct, I said. I think about everything a lot, she said. When I finally say something, I've already eliminated the less direct options. I looked at the letter again. Then out the window at the city, which was gray and November and going about its ordinary business. Dinner, I said. Dinner, she confirmed. Just that. No documents, no briefs, no arrangements. When I said, she said, "Are you free tonight? I want to tell you that I was sensible about it. I want to tell you that I went to dinner with Madeline Voss that Thursday evening in November, with appropriate caution and measured expectations, and the practical understanding that one evening and 41 days of someone thinking about you was not a foundation, that legal entanglement was not romance, that I was a 26-year-old with a mold problem in her bathroom, and she was the CEO whose name was on 3 buildings. I want to tell you I was sensible. I was not sensible. I was at the restaurant 15 minutes early, which was the most honest possible confession of where I was. She arrived exactly on time, no white coat, because this was not a hospital stories, no uniform, just Madeline in a dark coat, and the same watch and the same precise posture. She saw me at the table, and something in her expression did the thing I had seen once on the terrace, the smallest unlocking the armor finding a crack. She sat down. "You're early," she said. "You're on time," I said. "For me, that's late," she said. "I've been outside for 12 minutes. I looked at her. We looked at each other across the table. Then I said, "You have to tell me everything about page 7. She told me everything about page 7. It had been in the original document because the attorney had flagged the jurisdictional issue before the dinner and had included the clause as a protection. In case the arrangement was ever legally challenged, they needed a record. It was standard practice in that county for exactly this kind of formal partnership representation. Neither Madeline nor Thomas had fully read the implication at the time. When her legal team flagged it 3 weeks after the dinner, she had read it at her desk at 9 in the morning and sat very still for a long time. "Why?" I said. "Because my first thought," she said, "was not dissolution. And that surprised me. What was your first thought?" I said. She looked at her water glass, then at me. "That I had been thinking about a woman in a dark green dress for 3 weeks," she said, "and that technically and legally I had a reason to call her. And that I was furious at myself for needing a legal technicality to provide what should have been a simple choice." She looked at me directly. "I am not good at simple choices," she said. "I build architecture around things before I approach them. I make them certain before I make them known. I spent 3 weeks making this certain, and it still took a letter from an attorney to get it in front of you. And that is," she said, honestly embarrassing. I looked at her. "You thought about me for 3 weeks and didn't call," I said. "I was building the architecture," she said. "And what did the architecture conclude?" I said. "That I want to know you," she said. "Not the brief version, not the one evening performance version. The Middlemarch in your pocket, reading between trays, genuinely interested in an 81-year-old's opinions about buildings version. The real one." The restaurant was full around us, and the city was November gray outside the window, and none of that was where my attention was. "The paperwork," I said. "You're not dissolving it because it gives you a reason to be here." "Partly," she said, "and partly because I think the paperwork is the most honest thing I've done in years. I didn't plan it. I didn't build the architecture around it first. It just happened, and it said something real, and I am," she said, "choosing not to undo it until you tell me to." I looked at her for a long moment. "If I tell you to," I said. "If," she said, "not when. Your choice entirely. I'm not making any assumptions about what you want. I want to know what the architecture concludes in 6 months," I said. She was quiet for 1 second. Then something crossed her face that was different from every expression I had seen on it. Not the assessing look from the gala, not the management of the terrace, not the precision of the document explanation. Something that was just warm, just human, just a person who had been building walls for a long time and had just found an opening. I think the architecture concludes, she said carefully, that it is possible to build something from an accidental foundation. That what matters is not how the ground was laid, but whether the structure on top of it is real. That's a lot of metaphor for someone who usually communicates directly, I said. I'm nervous, she said. She said it plainly, like it was a fact worth stating. I had not expected that. The woman who catalogued me in 1 second at a gala and waited outside a restaurant for 12 minutes because she was early and arranged a fake marriage with surgical precision was sitting across a dinner table and telling me she was nervous. I'm nervous too, I said. Good, she said. That's probably appropriate. We ate dinner. We talked for 3 hours. Not the brief version, and not the performed version, and not the managed version. The real version. She told me about the company, about building it in her late 20s when everyone told her the timing was wrong, and the market was wrong, and she was wrong. She told me about her grandmother, about the inheritance condition, about the years of family dinners where she had arrived alone and felt the weight of expectations she had not chosen. She told me that she had read Middlemarch twice and had thoughts about Dorothea that she had never had anyone to discuss with. I told her about the graduate degree and the mold and 4 jobs and the particular specific pride of being exactly who you are in a world that keeps suggesting you should be someone more practical. I told her about my family and my city and the thing I was actually trying to write when I wasn't copy editing agricultural history. I told her that I had kept her business card in my dress pocket for 41 days and that I did not have a dignified explanation for that. She said, I don't need a dignified explanation. At 11 o'clock, she walked me to the train. We stood at the entrance and the cold was serious now, and she was looking at me with the warm expression was getting to understand was the one she could not manage or contain. I want to see you again, she said. Not because of the paperwork. Because of this. Yes, I said. Saturday, she said. Yes, I said again. She raised one hand and her thumb moved briefly across my cheekbone. The lightest possible touch. Just present. Then she put her hand in her pocket and said good night and walked back toward the street. I took the train home and sat in my corner seat and stared at my own reflection in the dark window and thought about the architecture of accidental things. What came next was the part I had not planned for, not the romance. I am getting to the romance. I mean the part before that, the part where you are newly entangled with someone and you are still understanding the shape of what you are to each other. And every interaction has both the warmth of something new and the awareness of how much you do not yet know. She was different from anyone I had been with before. Not better, not worse, just fundamentally differently built. She thought before she spoke in a way that I, who spoke while thinking and caught up to myself afterward, found initially disorienting and eventually deeply restful. She did not fill silences. She let them exist and only broke them when she had something worth putting in them. She was not cold. I understood quickly. She had never been cold. She was just someone who had spent years in rooms where she could not afford to be warm and had built a container for it that looked like cold from the outside. With me, the container was different from the beginning, not immediately open, not dramatic. But the cracks came faster than I think she expected, and I could see her registering them, the slight surprise of finding herself saying something she had not planned to say. The brief recalibration of someone who was used to knowing what they were going to do before they did it. We had dinner on Saturday and the following Thursday. And on a Sunday in December, I showed up at her building with a bag of groceries, and she opened the door and looked at the bag and said, "You're cooking." "I'm attempting to cook," I said. "You're an observer and a person who owns kitchen equipment I don't have in my mold apartment." She stepped back to let me in. "Your apartment doesn't have mold anymore," she said. "You fixed it in November. You remembered that," I said. "I remember everything you tell me," she said simply. I put the groceries on her counter. "That's a lot of pressure," I said. "Probably," she said. She was already opening the bag to see what I had brought. She pulled out the recipe card I had written by hand, because I did not want to keep checking my phone. She looked at the recipe card. "Then at me you wrote this by hand," she said. "I like handwriting," I said. She looked at it for another moment. Then she put it on the counter with the care of someone setting down something they intended to keep. I noticed that. I filed it away. I thought about it later that night. January came, and with it a question I had been holding. We had been seeing each other for 2 months. The paperwork still existed. We had not discussed it since November. It was a thing we were both aware of and both carefully not pressing on, the way you don't press on something that is healing. One evening she brought it up herself. We were at my apartment. She had come to see the mold remediation, which she said was a professional curiosity, and I believed exactly half of. We were on the couch with tea in the city outside doing its January things. Gray and cold and absolutely itself. The paperwork, she said. "I know," I said. "I want to ask you something about it, and I want you to be honest." "Okay," I said. "Does it bother you," she said, "the way it started? The arrangement, the document, the fact that there was a technical legal reality between us before there was a real one. Does it bother you that this began as a transaction?" I thought about it genuinely. Not the quick reassurance, the actual answer. "It used to feel strange," I said, "when I got the letter. The first hour. Because it felt like something had been decided about me without my input." She nodded. "And I was angry about the 3 weeks," I said. "I want you to know that's still true. That was wrong." "I know," she said. "But the transaction part," I said, "no, I don't think so. Because the transaction was how we were in the same room. What happened in the room wasn't a transaction. You listened to your grandmother talk about buildings for 23 minutes, because you knew I would ask her, and she deserved to be asked. That's not something you invoice." She was looking at me. "And you wrote the recipe card by hand," I said. She was quiet for a moment. "I put it in my desk," she said. "I know," I said. "How do you know?" she said. "Because you're someone who keeps things that matter to you and doesn't make a performance of keeping them," I said. "I've been paying attention." She looked at me with the warm expression, the one that was fully present and fully hers. "You have been," she said. "Yes, I have a question back," I said. She waited. "Why me?" I said. "At the gala. There were other people passing appetizers." "Why me specifically?" She was quiet for a moment. "Because you were reading," she said. "In the space between trays, you had the book out. You were doing that, and also doing the job, and you looked exactly like yourself, doing both of them. Not performing, not hoping to be noticed, just entirely present in your own life." She looked at her tea. I had not seen anyone look that way in a long time, like they were exactly where they chose to be. "Even though I was at a catering job to pay rent," I said. "Especially because of that," she said. "You weren't there because you had decided it was below you. You were there because it was what the moment required, and you were meeting it fully." She paused. I find that extremely difficult not to pay attention to. I looked at her on my couch in January. "I want to keep the paperwork," I said. She went very still. "Not because it makes anything official," I said, "but because I don't want to dissolve the only accidental true thing that's happened to me in years. I want to figure out what it becomes." She set her tea down. She turned toward me. "I want that too," she said. "I have wanted that since the terrace. You should have said so sooner," I said. "I know," she said. "I was building the architecture." "You have to stop that," I said. "With me. You can think first, that's fine, but then you have to say it. You can't keep building in private and presenting me with completed structures." She looked at me for a long moment. "That will be difficult," she said. "I know," I said. "Do it anyway." She took my hand. Her fingers laced through mine with the particular care of someone who understood the weight of the gesture. "I'll try," she said. "That's all," I said. We sat on the couch in January with our tea going cold and her hand in mine, and outside the window, the city was doing its gray winter thing, and none of that was the part I was paying attention to. The part I want to tell you about is February. 3 months in, the paperwork still intact, something between us that had been given enough time to be real. Her grandmother had been told, not about the arrangement, about us. Eleanor had called me directly, not Madeline, me, and had talked for 40 minutes about the Carey building restoration and 3 other projects, and had mentioned at the end that she was glad Madeline had found someone who listened. I told Madeline about the call. Her expression was the one I was beginning to collect, the quiet unlocking, the warmth she was still learning to leave out where I could see it. We were at her apartment. She had cooked, not well, which she approached with the same methodical focus as everything else, and I had said it was good because most of it was, and the rest of it I ate without comment. After dinner, she said, "I want to show you something." She went to her desk and came back with a folder. I looked at the folder. "I've been building," she said. She said it with the self-awareness of someone who knows their own patterns and is choosing to show them rather than hide them. "This time I'm showing you before it's complete, because you asked me to." I opened the folder. Inside was research, not legal research, life research, neighborhoods with reasonable rents and good light and no mold. A list of literary journals and publishers and residencies that aligned with what I had told her I was working on. Notes in her architectural handwriting about a spare room in her apartment, dimensions and light sources, the word study written at the top. I looked at the folder. I looked at her. "This is very much the architecture approach," I said. "I know," she said, "but I'm showing you this time before." I looked at the study notes, the dimensions, the light sources. "You measured the room," I said. "Last week," she said, "for a potential writing space," I said. "For you," she said simply, "if you wanted it. No pressure and no expectation. Just, I have a room and you have a mold history and you're writing something real. And the light in the spare room is good in the mornings." I closed the folder. "You measured the room," I said again. "It seemed like useful information to have," she said. Before the conversation, I looked at her. The woman who had handed me a business card at a gala and waited 12 minutes outside a restaurant and kept a recipe card in her desk and measured the light in her spare room before telling me about it. The woman who thought about everything a lot and moved slowly and built structures before she lived in them, and was, I understood now, doing the most vulnerable thing she knew how to do, which was showing me the building before it was finished. I stood up and closed the space between us. I kissed her. Not the first time we had gotten there in December, but this time with the particular intention of someone who has just been shown something real and wants to say yes to it in the most direct available language. She kissed me back with her hands on my face and her full attention, which was the most Madeline possible thing, complete presence, complete intention, nothing managed or performed. When we stopped, she was looking at me with that expression, wide open, fully hers. "The light is good in the mornings," I said. "Yes," she said. "I want to ask you," I said. She took my hand and showed me. "Here is what I know about accidental architecture. The foundation is not always what you planned. Sometimes it is a clause on page 7 of a document you did not read carefully. Sometimes it is a business card pressed into your hand by someone who decided in 1 second that you were worth a calculated risk. Sometimes it is a fake dinner and a real terrace and a coat shared between 2 people who were both pretending not to feel what they were feeling. The foundation does not have to be perfect. It has to be real, and the most real things are often the ones that arrived without permission. Madeline dissolved the original paperwork in March, not because we were undoing anything, because she wanted to redo it properly, in a way we had both chosen, without a legal clause that predated the choice. We handled the new paperwork ourselves, no attorneys, no assistants. Just 2 people at a kitchen table with the right documents and the full knowledge of what they were doing. She handed me the pen. "This time, read everything," she said. I read everything. All 11 pages, including page 7. Page 7, the new version, was a paragraph she had written herself, not in legal language, but in the precise architectural handwriting I knew from recipe cards and building notes and the margins of books she had been waiting to discuss. It said that she was choosing this without the architecture of certainty around it, that she was not fully sure how it would unfold, that she was showing me the unfinished building and trusting me to help complete it. I looked at her across the table. "You wrote this yourself," I said. "Yes," she said. "It's not legally binding," I said. "No," she said, "but it's true, and I wanted something true on the page." I signed, she signed. We filed the actual legal documents separately. The true paragraph lived on her desk after that, folded and kept the way she kept things that mattered. I moved my writing into the spare room in April. The light was good in the mornings. She was right about that, as she was right about most things. I finished the thing I was writing. In June, I dedicated it to the woman who measured the room before she told me about it. She cried when she read the dedication. Not openly. She was still Madeline, and she was still someone who felt things in the contained way that was her nature. But I saw it. The shining in her eyes that she managed, and then stopped managing, because she had been practicing for months, showing me the building before it was finished. I am telling you this story because people ask us how we started, and the answer is always a little complicated. The catering job, the gala, the business card. The dinner I was hired to perform and instead genuinely attended. The document I should have read more carefully. The 3 weeks she sat with something before she acted on it. The letter. The phone call. The architecture of a thing that was accidental at every step, and realness at every step because of it. The grandmother still calls me. She called last week to tell me about a building in another city that she thinks I would appreciate, and I listened for 30 minutes and asked questions that she said were the right ones. She told me that she had known about the arrangement before the dinner. I went very still. Thomas told her in advance, she said. Madeline did not know this. She thought she was managing the situation. Eleanor had been managing the situation since she set the inheritance condition, because she had decided years ago that Madeline needed a reason to let someone in and had been waiting for the right person to arrive at a gala with a book in her pocket. I stared at the wall of our apartment. The inheritance, I said, was never actually conditional, Eleanor said, with the serenity of someone who had been waiting to say this for 2 years. I made it up. She needed a reason to try. I gave her one. I thought about this for a long time. Then I thought about what Madeline would say when I told her. Then I decided not to tell her. Not because it was a secret worth keeping, but because some foundations, once you have built a life on them, do not need to be excavated. The building is real. The life inside it is real. The woman at the kitchen table with architectural handwriting and a recipe card in her desk, and a spare with good morning light is real. The rest is just how the story started. And some stories start strangely and arrive somewhere extraordinary, and the strangeness is not the point. The point is that I am here. She is here. We chose this eventually and fully, and with complete knowledge of every page, including page 7. We are still choosing it. Every day with our eyes open and the building unfinished and the architecture still in progress. Still yes, every single time, yes.